What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, for those of you who haven't seen me with my bald head, then here you go. Just embrace the bald, man. So that's all you need to do. I see your comments. Some of you have come up with some really good ones. You know, I liquidated my hair. What other ones are there? Someone's coming out with some wild stuff, but you know what? Your comments are really funny. So I'd welcome more opinions on the new look. I don't know, man. It's tough getting used to it. Anyways, listen, got a very important day today. And the marketplace is having to come to terms with the story of what? The Fed versus the US government. I mean, listen, we don't really have that problem. But Trump has got it in for everyone at the Federal Reserve. I'm going to be diving into the article that's come out. And apparently this is it. He has now effectively fired Lisa Cook, the Federal Reserve governor, and she was planning on serving until 2038, but Trump doesn't want her in office. And that's going to be a bit of a problem for the marketplace, because if the Fed's not easy and there's effectively, like, how can I put it, mutiny on the bounty, for the better word, then you've got yourself a little bit of a sticky situation where investors are thinking, you know what? We've already got a problem with debt. We've already got a problem with the inconsistency of the interest rates. What on earth is going on? Why isn't this guy just shutting up and just letting people get on with it? All right, your interest rates are high. So's your debt. Today's live stream, I'm going to introduce you into something that is actively happening all under our noses. Whilst we're all busy focusing on Bitcoin's all-time high, NASDAQ's all-time high, you, of course, got to understand the concept that when prices are rising, a lot of smart money, bigger players are actively selling. Going into the start of the year, ladies and gentlemen, if you recall, we heard about quite a few big CEOs, Tim Cook, Nvidia, Jensen. They were all offloading stock. Okay, Warren Buffett has been getting rid of his Apple stock, and you know, a lot of companies and a lot of investors are actively transitioning and removing risk. And today's live, I'm going to explain to you where that risk is now going. And we probably are seeing the same thing happening that happened before in 2020, when you had that little bit of a pandemic. Investors are starting to move money, and it's all happening under our noses. And this is where we got to go back to the legacy markets, because as much as the idea of Bitcoin is the money for the future, when whales are dumping Bitcoin at significant levels, you can appreciate that Bitcoin ain't going to go to certain levels unless those whales are satisfied with the amount that Bitcoin is, and they want to step in and buy some more of it. In other words, you're all waiting for the right magic price to get Bitcoin on the cheap. So let's break it all down. We're going to head you into the New York Open, and that should leave us with a decent day of information, I hope, that you can take with you. And listen, take this with a pinch of salt. It's not gospel, it's facts on what's going on right now with money. So let's break it all down, ladies and gentlemen. Mad love and respect. I used to have hair, now I don't. I think that's my new slogan right now. Anyway, so stocks are pulling back on this story regarding Trump and Lisa. It's not really good right now. And here's the letter right here. He's effectively relieves Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook of her position. Look, the Federal Reserve has got big problems. Right now, we are still in line with the idea of an 84.2% chance of interest rate cuts. Today's data that's just got released. Your US economy is doing wonderful. Doing great, guys. I mean, look, core durable goods orders come in 1.1% up. Now, the problem with core durable goods coming in higher right now is because there's concerns about tariffs. Not to forget the fact that Donald Trump is also on slew for another tariff story. It says here, risk appetite received a further knock after Trump renewed his trade brinksmanship, threatening fresh tariffs and export restrictions on advanced technology and semiconductors. Trade export restrictions. Does anybody remember the rare earth metal story with China, where they capped exports of rare earth metals, and the US was like, right, trying to go to the world trade and complain and to like try and take China to court on this unfairness of them capping the exports of rare earth metals, 60% of the supply, you can appreciate that they were able to mark up a lot of those rare earth metals that the US had no choice but to pay. Trump has got it in for anyone that has tried to stick it to the US historically. And this is what you're witnessing right now. Now, let me explain something. Let me show you what's going on with money, and take it again with a pinch of salt. Don't look at it as this guy is negative. No, I'll give you the flavor for the good days and the bad days. Ultimately, if I was negative and the markets could only be parabolic and go straight up, you would have every reason to challenge me and say, Tino, why are you looking at the other side of it? Can't you see everything's being great and going up? But we're not in that marketplace, and we've got to come to the reality of things. Let me explain. US federal debt has ballooned by $1 trillion in 48 days. That is great news, isn't it? Remember, the US deficit is climbing and climbing. And of course, for every dollar that the US earns, it owes 120%, 126% on top. So the US debt is up, and that's over the last 48 days. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Check this out. In front of you, the Kabasi letter has come out with some interesting statistics. It says here, investors have poured a record $57 billion into global investment grade corporate bond funds over the last 4 weeks, right? It says that the total global government and corporate bonds funds posted a record $97 billion in net inflows over the same period. Similar levels of inflows have only been seen during the 2020 pandemic recovery. Global government and corporate bond funds are now set to attract $700 billion in net inflows this year, an all-time high. This would materially surpass the previous record of $620 billion. Bond markets are witnessing historic inflows. Why are they going into the bonds market? Surely Bitcoin's the future. Surely Nvidia's the future. Nasdaq's going up all-time highs. Why is the street going into the bonds market? Couple of things. First things first, you've got to accept the fact that we're coming into the story of interest rate cuts. Check this out. In front of you, you've got the reverse repurchase agreement, where you are always going to be watching this now, because when this goes up, Bitcoin goes down. Simple as. Okay? It's increased by 10 billion. It's now 47.57 billion. It was at a low of around 22. Now it's gone to 47.57. This, for anybody new, is Wall Street's savings account offered by the US government. In other words, the US says, hey, man, come and give us your money. We'll give you a treasury bond that you earn interest on, and then we'll reverse that transaction for you. Happy days. Okay, cool. So we've just had an increase of 10 billion, right? Cool. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Corporate bonds, what are they? They're effectively bonds that are provided by corporate companies, and they are carrying a much greater return. As it stands, the Bank of America Merrill Lynch AAA corporate bond effective yield is offering 4.68%. What's your 10-year doing? Let's go and have a look at the US government. Right now, the 10-year US is offering 4.285%. The 2-year is offering at 3.7%. The 5-year is offering 3.77%. And of course, the 30-year is offering at 4.9%. All right? So it's safe to say that you ideally really want to be getting involved in corporate bonds. Okay? Investors are going over there. Why? Well, let's just break it down a little bit more. What's this we got here? The global recession probability is coming in at 36.01%. So we don't really need to worry about it unless it starts to go above the 50 percentile range. All right? But why so much money going into the bonds? Into other bits of information. This is the US credit spread versus the S&P 500. Historically, when there is a bit of a spread, okay, you can allocate and understand what's likely to happen next, all right? And you can appreciate that the S&P is just gone. Credit spread is low, and the spread between can imply that there is a possibility of a contraction. We know full well that people are borrowing a lot of money. Historically, when it peaks above the 0.4 region itself, it usually gives us the idea that the marketplace could be close to bubbling. Could that make sense that investors believe that the market is going to go into a recession or there's going to be a bubble that's going to come into play, which is why they're all plowing into the bonds? Is it possibly the reason that they think that interest rates are going to get cut, so they're going to lose on the rates of the US bond market, so they may as well start going into corporate bonds to lock in a higher rates of return, as per se of this, where you got 4.68% coming into play, and that's going down now because the anticipation of interest rates being reduced in the US is going to be playing out soon. You've got the NASDAQ already at significant highs. Where is your value? Is it not safe to say that the stock market is overvalued? We can say that, can't we? Yeah, it's safe to say. How many of you agree with me on that? Going over into other aspects of it all, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at crypto. $940 million worth of Bitcoin or leverage traders have been liquidated. Whales are offloading cryptocurrency. That kind of sets the precedent for the wall. Going over into this chart over here is the Bitcoin hedgers position index. Where are the hedgers right now? Well, they've obviously hedged themselves, because after it peaked out over here to a 2 standard deviation, Bitcoin's price had moved up. So they've hedged themselves. Now they're restarting the hedging process. The logic says that hedgers right now are in effective shorts on Bitcoin. Now, the benefit of Bitcoin is you can be long on Bitcoin on spot and you can short it in the futures market, right? But looking at Bitcoin's price action, is Bitcoin representing the truth behind money actually moving? Think about it. If they're all going into the bonds market because of the anticipation of interest rate cuts, because, of course, the story with tariffs, and it's going to be an impact for various industries. You got problems at home where Trump's trying to get rid of people in the Federal Reserve just to push his own agenda of the interest rates. He'll cut the rates too aggressively. That's why everyone's going into the US bond market right now, because they know that the rates on the yields are going to come down aggressively. So they're trying to position themselves and get yields locked in just in case there's a recession, just in case there is another trade war, and just in case they're star-like companies like your Nvidias, your Apples, and your Microsofts, they all start to come down and consolidate, because the pricing pressures that Trump's putting on to companies all around the world and economies in regards to tariffs is going to take its toll. The data itself that came out today is giving you the picture that this is tariff. It's nothing to do with the truth behind the economy. But isn't the economy doing great? No, they're all ordering things up now because there's nothing set in stone about China. China is the world's factory. So why is there no tariff right now on China? China's investments is starting to drop. No one's investing in China. Its economy is slowing down. Trump said it yesterday, I can stick it to China, but I'm not going to. He already has. The world's factory is slowing down. That's why core durable goods orders came in higher, because they're all rushing to try and get what they can, because they think that the future is going to look like it's going to be a costly thing. The core price index this Friday is going to tell us exactly if inflation is sticky. And if it is coming in sticky, even though they're projecting it to come in at 0.3%, which is higher, then, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have ourselves a bit of a problem. Maybe Wall Street is getting itself ready for a problem. I'm just speculating. Would that not be a time for Bitcoin to start doing that move? Let's be honest now. Would now not be a time for Bitcoin to start moving up? The problem is your Bitcoin's packed with Wall Street money. That means legacy mentality. That means mom and dad investors. That means people who just recently came into cryptocurrency because of the ETF are going to be exercising the same mentality as they would buying any other ETF. If there's profit, they'll take it. If the market's going to turn, I'm going to get out. That's why we're seeing the balance now go to 745,152 from a high of nearly 750,000. All right? Remember, BlackRock doesn't own the ETF, the Bitcoin. It owns the ETF. It offers the ETF. You just pay BlackRock for the luxury of being able to say that you own Bitcoin ETF. So this will always fluctuate. But if we start seeing the bonds market making significant moves to the upside, right? That's the bond market getting ready for an event. Let's be honest now. How many of you are happy buying at these high prices? Let me know. How many of you are happy buying Bitcoin at these price levels? Don't say it's because you think Bitcoin's going to bounce from here and go to the moon. Hopefully it does move up. Hopefully there is a point in the chart that Bitcoin can actually sustain and then give us the idea that prices are going to continue to go higher. I gave you the logic yesterday in regards to Bitcoin on the daily time frame. Go over and have a look. You can see it's completely recovered the vector candle. There's only one more vector candle zone down here around the 102,000 region. That for me would be a wonderful discount on Bitcoin. But how many of you would be buying at this point? Bitcoin to the moon? No thanks. Hell yeah, I am buying here. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, there's a lot of alts and what have you. Does Tino have warrants? My buddy shaved his head and grew a beard after he skipped court. No. Apparently, let me just draw your attention to this. This is interesting. Check this out. Someone tagged me in this. Where is it? Calling a man bald is sexual harassment. Employment tribunal rules it, sorry. Can you believe that? So I mean, I'm not in a workplace per se unless I'm going to sue myself. But that is wild. I have rights, you know, as a bald man. The world has lost it's not even lost its marbles, ladies and gentlemen. It's just gone. It's done. All right. Anyways, I'm more interested in the time you can predict the direction more than price prediction. Hold on, this is interesting. I am more interested in the time you can predict and the direction more than price prediction. Price prediction is BS because price is relative to the person who wants to buy it or sell it. So there's no point in looking for a price prediction. It's true what you're saying. You're more interested in the time and the direction it's likely to go. Well, the only way that you can determine that from a probabilistic point of view, that means what are the odds that it's going to work in your favor? What are the odds of it actually playing out in your favor? Well, because we're obviously talking on the hard right of the chart, we are projecting this. We are basing time and direction on this, which is nothing. Okay, all we have is this over here, and we make the assumption that the market's memory is going to get triggered at specific points. Why? Because the same people that were buying Bitcoin on this move to the downside over here are equally the same people. So these guys who are buying Bitcoin here are equally the same people that were selling it here, right? So the same people that were effectively buying Bitcoin here are effectively the same people that are buying Bitcoin or selling Bitcoin here. So we can then make an assumption to ourselves and say, okay, then, so how long are people going to be buying Bitcoin as it pulls back? With the logic saying that we can anticipate that they're going to start selling it as it moves back up again. That right there can only be based on the previous behavior of the participants who were selling it before and buying it before. How can we effectively itemize that, right? You've got the vector candles. So these are blocks. So this is a vector candle, all right? The only next point of interest where we could see that people had actively started to get involved in Bitcoin and the offering process came into play, which means that investors were effectively selling into participants who were buying. Okay, so you got this guy over here who wants to sell $4.45 million worth of Bitcoin at 111,222. That's going to be an order that's going to get triggered to sell the Bitcoin. So if there's enough people coming in to buy it aggressively as it's moving up because everyone is scared that they're going to miss out on big moves to the upside and Bitcoin's going to go to the moon and what have you, and that's going to be fueled by retail, right? So in order to understand the time, it will be physically impossible to determine that. But rather than focus on time and direction, focus on the speed of how price moves and intention. It's the only way that you can really classify a candlestick. You all know a bearish engulfing pattern. You all know morning stars, evening stars, 3 dojis. You all know how to classify a candlestick, right? Because that's all you've got. Behind the classification of a candlestick is the order flow inside. What makes the candlestick, right? A vector candle tells you that these guys right here were looking to mark prices higher, okay? It ended up leading price to go up. The same candlestick that appeared here didn't really give that much more movement to the upside. How do we know inside of that candlestick right there on that day that there was orders that were coming into play at the top side of that range or the bottom side of that range. We don't know unless we dive into the order flow of it. But the green vectors and the red vectors are a representation of someone's intention to move the market or encourage participants to get involved and fulfilling what they want them to achieve, which is either to sell Bitcoin or to buy Bitcoin. So buy Bitcoin would be red vector, sell Bitcoin would be a green vector candle. Got to look at it in terms of the order flow. Right now, you can see yesterday, they marked prices lower. You had this dude down here that bought nearly $10 million worth of Bitcoin at 109,302. He's now in effectively a $600 profit in price on Bitcoin, right? So we then go to the chart and we say to ourselves, okay, where's the next logical spot to buy Bitcoin? Well, it's down here at 102,000. Why? Because that is the point where they last consolidated, where they were going up and down, and then all of a sudden, we had an aggressive candlestick that moved at speed and started to recover the majority of 1, 2, 3. So it had engulfed nearly 3 daily candlesticks, okay? And it confirmed the test of the 50 EMA. That is how you identify the time and the direction. If you look at the movement and the time that it gets to it, how quick does it go to it? How many candlesticks does it take to get to that point? The faster they get to that point, the sooner they want to trigger the liquidity at that range. Then you can make the assumption that they're going to reverse from that point. But is it guaranteed? Nope. But at least you're coming to the charts with some logic. And you're not going on some dude that said you should buy Bitcoin because Michael Saylor yesterday has topped up his balance and now they're sitting at 635,000 Bitcoin. We don't care if Saylor keeps buying because he's always going to keep on buying, right? Doesn't matter. Ultimately, the speed of way price moves towards a specific zone is going to give you information about whether they are going to hold that point or not. That's your next point of interest, in my opinion. If Bitcoin loses this vector zone right here at 108,669, Bitcoin has got more room to go into this range over here. And that's the 101,000 region. Why not? Tell me why Bitcoin can't go to that point. What if tomorrow's earnings on Nvidia, all right? We got Nvidia earnings tomorrow, okay? What if Nvidia doesn't come through with anything? What's going to happen then? Stock market's going to take a nosedive. What do you think Bitcoin's going to do? Bitcoin's going to hold out. Why are we seeing all of a sudden articles coming out? Wales this, Wales that. This dormant wallet's woken up. This guy's woken up. He's sold his Bitcoin, and he's put a big amount of supply back into the cryptocurrency space. Who's buying it at these levels? Retail. Why? Because they think that Bitcoin can't stop. Now, look, I'm giving you the reality of it, all right? I'm justifying the story that money is moving in Wall Street. Okay. And Bitcoin is deemed as a high risk asset. Yep. Bitcoin is a store of value, but Wall Street don't think that. Why? Because they're going into corporate bonds. They are preparing for the future. Now, I've said this. We need Bitcoin to experience a catastrophic event in fiat, but they're still using fiat apparatus. They still need that stuff because it's mentality. All right. Bitcoin is great. Everyone's buying it. Everyone's doing great. But where are the big fat heavyweights that are buying it, right? Why isn't Microsoft board of directors accepted Bitcoin? Why not Meta? Why or not all the other gang, okay? Why is Michael Saylor having to go out and pitch to these directors the phenomenon of Bitcoin and they're not even taking it? They're stuck in an old mentality. Something bad needs to happen to fiat, and it's clear as day that it's happening because the deficit of the US is just shooting up. It's not stopping. Where are we with it all? Here we go. We've got corporate debt sales just hit $1 trillion, fastest pace since 2020, according to stockmarket.news. There it's all starting to come into play. They're transitioning. They're preparing for an event because no one's talking about recession and you've got high deficits and the debt is going up. In 48 days, $40 trillion. Where is it? There you go. That is going up. But Donald Trump did increase the debt ceiling. If you remember his first cabinet meeting where Bessent turned around and said, well, we've increased the debt ceiling, so we don't need to worry about that for a couple of years. Thank you very much, Bessent. And today, Donald Trump is going to be having a conversation in the cabinet room at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard. So you can appreciate that the market is going to be on edge a little bit to find out what Trump has to say, especially with regards to this story about, not that one, but in regards to the firing of Lisa Cook. That's going to be interesting. So you can also appreciate that the stock market itself has got to work out whether or not Nvidia is going to come through with its earnings, with all the pressures that are going off with the tariffs. Stock markets are all-time high. Tell me why people are buying right now. Tell me what, if you guys ain't going to be looking at buying, right? What makes you think Wall Street is? They're going elsewhere. And that's my logic. That is my logic right there. I've got evidence here to say that that is the case. When they start going into corporate bonds that are offering higher rates of return compared to the US bond, it means that they know that the interest rates are going to get cut in the US. So we better go over and lock in some yield elsewhere. If you look at the US bond market, when they're saying on this article that this is before the subprime, the pre-COVID levels, look what happened to the bond market at that time. When corporate bonds started to move up, okay, as we head into COVID, look what happened. They all just went into that because they wanted to lock in the yields. They wanted fixed income securities, short-term dated securities per se, all right? They were going into it because they were concerned about what the future looked like. Then all of a sudden they fixed the problem and then bang, the bond started to go down, the risk starts coming into play and then NASDAQ makes a significant move to the upside. You're looking for these events and it looks like we're heading in that direction. Capiche? Money is flowing into alts. We need dominance to go down. I mean, let's go and have a look at this with the Bitcoin dominance. Here we go. So Bitcoin dominance is painting a very interesting picture. It's currently at 58.35%. I mean, yeah, it's your Solana's doing okay. It seems like spike up, down, spike up, down. It's consistent with accumulation for me because that's what Solana does. It does this behavior and then you get a big rush. Okay, of course, with the Solana ETF, I think they're just preparing for it. The ETF comes into play, bang, Solana then starts to make a significant move to the upside. Quickly, let's just go and have a look at the stock market and where we are from Monday's action. It's the 5 days of distribution on the NASDAQ, 6 on the S&P, just before the market opens right now. Quickly going over into it, we can see, bullish, by the way. It's the Peter Thiel-backed exchange. Yeah, that's a very interesting one. You can actually trade this on BTCC. So if you go into, last night, I tried to take advantage of a retrace on Bitcoin last night. Didn't quite get what I wanted. In other words, all right, so we $1,700 cleared there on Bitcoin and then did the same thing a little bit with Ethereum. And then Solana said, go F yourself and kind of screwed me a little bit. Okay, so I didn't really get much, but it was such a slow move last night, moving to the upside. All right, but we did well yesterday. Can't shy from that. Yesterday, we had a wonderful day. Just go and watch yesterday's video to see what happened there. But in terms of the markets on BTCC, they've just added some new stocks. So you can now trade, where is it? Bullish. There you go. There's that stock right there, right? You can also trade SBET and Riot and FGNX and, of course, other Bitcoin companies as such. But what you got to look out for is this. When these guys come into earnings, because you've got NVIDIA earnings that you can trade on this as well, right? But when these guys declare their earnings, if I go into it on bullish, their earnings per share is going to be, well, when's their next reading going to come out? Not just yet. But you can appreciate that this is an exchange, all right? Cayman Islands-based global digital asset platform that provides market infrastructure and information services, all right? $63. From a high of nearly 120 on its IPO, right? We look at the volume and you can see 15 million shares. That's a good stock to trade. More importantly, we want to see when the fund owners start to get in because management holds 71% of the stock. And that makes things very interesting. That's why it's priced at around the 65 right now. You can appreciate by the principle of supply and demand, these guys hold 71% of the shares, right? This thing starts to go up. These guys start offering their services. You can appreciate this thing's going to move. Quickly going over into Circle, because I know you guys are talking about that. Circle's pulling back, $124.84. I don't care what anyone... There we go, 70. Some fund owners are coming in. I'm not fixated on Circle, but we're putting in a logic right now. And that logic says that this is part of the stablecoin story. We know what developments are happening. Okay, they are bidding for it and picking up a lot of these shares. They're not aggressively selling, right? The second they come into a deal with another platform or another stablecoin issuer, they may have bought out whatever partnerships they're getting involved in, Circle is going to start trending up once the utility starts getting put into action. Genius Bill, Genius Act, Clarity Act, and all of that stuff as well, all right? You've got a pro-crypto friendly government, ladies and gentlemen. You can't complain about that. It's just a matter of time for Circle, in my honest opinion. Okay, cool. Going into the open right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're seeing Bitcoin not really doing too much. Let's go and have a look at the daily price action. 15-minute time frame. Where we at? Bitcoin, what are you doing? Yeah, it seems like it's holding out a little bit right now. Quickly going into the NASDAQ, just understand where we are. Nice movement on NASDAQ, but be very careful. Be very careful with NASDAQ because gold's going up and NASDAQ's going up. Euro is up. So that could be an interesting story to say the least. But we've got vectors down here. That could be a problem for me. We've got to wait and see how the Brinks box behaves itself. But what exchange do you use? I use BTCC. This is what I use. Where are we? There you go. BTCC, and link for that is in the description. You get a couple of benefits if you do join with the Traders Reality link. But this is where I'm trading, and we've got some trading to do. So with that being said, be sure to like and subscribe. Hope I haven't scared you off with the idea of the bond markets and what have you, but just take it in your stride and understand that you've got to move risk. All right, you've got to protect yourself. If Wall Street's doing that, what the hell are you doing? Yeah? Mad love and respect, guys, and I'll tune into you all later. Peace.